tale of how a mother and her 6 daughters, along with a handful of servants and maids, defeated an army of 600 men here at the site of Corfe Castle in Dorset, England. The year is 1642, and England is embroiled in the first civil war between parliamentarian forces, and those still loyal to the crown on the side of the Royalists. The parliamentarians, also known as the Roundheads, were slowly but surely gaining ground throughout England against the Royalists, who were also known as the Cavaliers. Loyalty for the crown was weakening throughout the country, with most of their support spread far and wide throughout the vast countryside. Sir John Banks, Attorney General to King Charles I and Lord of Corfe Castle in Dorset, one of the furthest regions from the capital of London, was absent in his role whilst serving the king. For this allegiance to the king, John and his family are seen as traitors in the eyes of the parliamentarians. John's wife, Lady Mary Banks, is forced to move herself and her 6 daughters to Corfe Castle in Dorset, in addition to a massive reduction of income. Seen as a safe haven, Mary believed themselves to be far from the reaches of war. Not only is this sprawling fortress hundreds of miles from the epicenter of the war, but it is a true marvel of defensive architecture. Sat upon a large steep hill with 2 large outer bailies and an inner bailey with an impressive keep at its heart. Within these walls, it's impossible to feel unsafe. But as the war drags on, by the year 1643, Parliament forces were tearing their way through the once tranquil southwest counties of England. Much of Dorset was now in the hands of parliamentarians, targeting the estates and families of Royalist leaders that still remain. On the 1st of May 1643, Mary is out hunting with a handful of servants on what is a traditional annual May Day stag hunt. This is in defiance of the war and the Roundheads, who are close to victory. Parliament forces numbering around 300 men and led by Sir Walter are marching towards Corfe Castle with the intention of a quick surrender by Lady Mary Banks, as they know there is little to no defence within the castle's walls. However, luckily they were spotted by tenants of the surrounding area and rushed to warn Mary on her hunt. With almost no time to waste, Mary and her small band of servants and daughters ride back to the castle. With fast horses and no armour or heavy equipment to slow them down, Mary and her company were able to ride back at great pace. Through a matter of luck, she arrives at the castle minutes before the parliamentarian forces. To the shock of everyone, immediately as she rides through the gates, she orders the defences to be raised, rather than give an order of surrender. The force she has to defend this castle consists of her 6 daughters, 5 guards and her servants. Now faced with the true reality of war, this small, untrained and unexperienced band of defenders face a force of 300 fully armed soldiers. Perched upon a large hill and stood on top of the tall walls overlooking Sir Walter and his men, Mary has to devise a plan, and fast. In addition to the insurmountable odds facing Mary, there is no active artillery within the castle, as any war equipment has been stripped and is in use through various battles still raging in the Civil War. However, there are 4 antique cannons, used for nothing more than garden ornaments. Mary orders they be quickly mounted upon the wall. Even this proves to be a task, as cannons are heavy objects and would need all of her daughters and servants to lift them into place. Immediately, they fire all the cannons successfully towards the parliamentarian forces. Foolishly, as the parliamentarians do not expect resistance, they do not rush to take the castle, nor did they have any defences raised themselves. This is what gives Mary and her defenders time to aim and fire directly at the Roundheads with great success. So shocked and confused are the parliamentarians, they start to run and cry, unsure if the castle is fully manned, as they believed the castle to have no defence whatsoever. The 300 soldiers ran from the site, only to return stronger and in greater numbers by the early summer. This is just the start of one of the most defiant sieges in English history. Mary was from a long line of royal blood that can trace its origins back to the Norman conquest of 1066. This sense of loyalty to her royal ancestors meant she would never surrender. After the first act of defence, Mary smuggled her young sons away to Oxford to ensure the family line and their safety. By June, fooled by the cannons, the parliamentarians returned with a force of 600 men. But as the following siege takes place, they soon discover they should have brought more. Mary also used this time to shore up her defences, with loyal farmhands and townsfolk from the surrounding countryside. Up to 80 men are now willing to fight and die for Lady Mary Banks and the Royalist cause. In addition, Mary knows how to make the castle ready, as they set up boiling oil, rocks and anything they can find to drop on the enemy, setting up everything they need up along all the walls, ready to die if need be. The local village is cut off from the castle, and all supplies are seized by the parliamentarians, creating complete isolation for the defenders of Corfe Castle. The local church and houses are ransacked and stripped of wood to build ladders. To make matters worse, the parliamentarian forces are largely made up of ex-convicts, murderers, thieves, rapists and all manner of human scum. This creates a large scale of abuse and torture for any locals still at the surrounding villages. The army of criminals are essentially promised anything they could get their hands on if they took the castle, including alcohol, jewellery and worst of all, women. Every angle they approach Corfe Castle, they are faced with a steep hilly climb and all manner of spikes, traps and other obstacles. The chosen and focused area of attack is the West Bailey. For weeks, the parliamentarians try to scale the steep hill and to take the West Bailey on countless occasions, desperate to find a way inside the walls. So intense and consistent is this assault. Nearly all of Mary's servants and men are now stationed within this Western Bailey, leaving Mary and her daughters alone within the inner ward. By August, the attacking force, whilst pinning down all the men in the West Bailey, keeping them busy with attempts on the gatehouse and a constant effort to scale the vast walls, muster another force to climb the north wall, straight to where Mary and her daughters are alone, with nothing more than a handful of maids. The parliamentarian forces quickly mobilised ladders up the wall and start to climb. But Mary and her daughters are not hiding, they are ready. The climb up the north wall is perhaps the steepest of them all, which is why it had not yet been attempted. With hot embers and burning oil, they manned this wall themselves. One by one, they throw all manner of burning substances upon the climbing force, rendering each ladder useless and throwing every climber to their death. Eventually, these criminal soldiers lose morale and retreat. By the end of this attempt on the castle, Mary and her small garrison have killed over 100 men, while she had only lost 2 of her own during the entire siege. Sir Walter and his men, now in realization that this was not an easy victory, flee the site, and victory is handed to Lady Banks, at least for a short while. Soon after, Mary's husband John returns to the castle to celebrate Mary's victory. However, this still does not spell the end of the defiance of Lady Mary Banks. Shortly after this victory, John and Mary had their 14th son. But a window of tragedy looms over them in the year of 1644. Sir John gains a fever, with Mary refusing to leave his bedside. Within a month, John had passed away. Lady Banks is now a widow, but with many sons and daughters at her side, ready to face whatever the parliamentarians throw at her next. The year is now 1646, and the Royalists are growing weak as parliamentarian victory seems imminent. So far, they have not dared to attack Corfe Castle again. But with her husband dead and foreseeing the eventual reattempt on the castle, Mary ensures she and her family are far from the castle. A treacherous act of betrayal from Lieutenant Pitman of the Royalists sees him sneak 120 parliamentarians into the castle. Without the will of Mary or her daughters, within a matter of hours those garrisoned at the castle finally surrender. In March 1646, an order of slighting befell the castle. This is a common practice during the Civil War where castles were destroyed, to prevent them being used again. However, Lady Banks was far from giving up both her right to the castle and all her estates. Despite being stripped of all wealth and title, and among calls for her beheading, she makes herself heard. With still a number of friends and allies within the English hierarchy, she petitions for years to regain her estates. Her story of defiance becomes a beacon of strength throughout England, and simply beheading her would have created a martyrdom for any loyal Royalists still willing to fight. As an astonishing consequence, the parliamentarians decided to honour her bravery and determination by presenting to her the keys to the castle once more. In 1660, the monarchy of England was fully restored, and more money and lands are returned to the Banks family, with her son Ralph even being knighted and moving back to Dorset. Mary Banks dies the following year in 1661, having lived through the Civil War and regaining almost all that was stripped from her family. If you have enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more tales of incredible, odd, defying sieges and stories from castles throughout the medieval world. From castles with walls made up of 15-meter thick stone, sieges that wore on for years, to the many ghosts and horror stories still echoing throughout these ancient walls. For example, this is Goodrich Castle, another site that was paramount in the English Civil War that displayed great defiance, as parliamentarians and royalists fought for years over control of this key stronghold. Click on the video here to watch now.